Welcome to the Night Shift Podcast. My name is Jeff Sharon. We got a full house with you. We got Andrew Glukov. We've got Kyle Nash. We've got Bryson Turner. We've got Nick Porcelli. Eric Lopez is going to join us in a little bit. We got a full slate of things, even though football is basically done. We have the Country Club Sports finishing up their conference stuff. We got baseball and softball moving forward, and we've got a lot of transfer news to talk about. It's a pretty busy show here, so let's go ahead and get started here. Of course, you can follow us at UCF banner _SBN as we are doing this podcast as part of Black and Gold Banner. But we can go ahead and get started right away, guys. By the way, we're recording this on Tuesday, doggone it, April 25th, which, as all of you know, is the perfect date. Happy April 25th to all who celebrate. Make sure you wear your light jacket. And we will start with the transfer portal and some guys who might be wearing some new jackets here and there. So
I thought you said football was done, Jeff.
Well, football is done, but the stuff surrounding football is never done, it seems, these days. And
football is never done, baby.
Yeah, but it's a little bit of a surprise with that came out last week with Thomas Castellanos, UCF's quarterback. Who was recruited 2 years ago to come here amidst great fanfare, played in the spring game. Shortly after the spring game, he announced that he was entering the transfer portal. Tommy, of course, played. He played beyond the red shirt limit last year, and was probably in at least in line to be the QB2, we were thinking, behind John Rice Plumlee, but now he is he's gone. He's heading somewhere else. And early reports are, as I pull up his bio, try to pull up his bio and stats on UCF's website, he's already 404'd out there. Word is he was just recently in Texas, visiting at Texas State, which is where the current head coach, the new head coach out there is G.J. Kinney, UCF's former offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, who is now the head coach out there and recruited Tommy Castellanos to UCF. And so I want to start with Kyle here. Panic in the ranks, Kyle. Oh my gosh, Castellanos is leaving. Fold the program. It's over, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely burn it to the ground, put the close sign, give the Big 12 back their invite. All of the above. No, obviously. So I will say this: it's somewhat
panic at the disco, everything.
That's right.
That's the line I was looking for.
I get why fans would be perturbed by this, because I was in the room just days after the spring game, where Thomas Castellanos said he was the future of UCF. Right? If I'm not starting, I'm QB2, and I'm the future of this place, was the more precise quote. Or the future of UCF was what he said. But what I'll say is this, guy. The reason why this is a big deal than your typical down-the-line quarterback transfer is because of John Rice Plumlee and his style of play. Now, I'll grant we haven't seen Hinshaw as the new offensive coordinator, new play caller, operate in a game yet, so maybe this will be less true. We'll see that, but we all know that John Rice Plumlee operates running the football and is at times notorious for trying to run like a 5-foot-something guy when he's, he's 6 foot, whatever, but rather than, let's say, a 6'5" guy like Cam Newton, a former Gus Malzahn prospect and quarterback at one point in his Auburn days, right? So with that in mind and him likely to miss time, that backup quarterback position is essential. Mikey Keene was perfect for it before he transferred. Castellanos was looking better in the spring game, was not in a deer in the headlights from the one showing that we did see in the spring game. I know it's just a spring game, but his footwork was already massively better. He was making better reads and decisions. He had a little chemistry issues, which he'll certainly have when he transfers. But the big reason this is a problem is because there's no reason to believe JRP will play every single snap offensively for the Knights this season. And now who's going to do it? Do you believe in Timmy McClain? I currently don't, based on the little small sample size we saw so far.
Let me play devil's advocate for you on a second. Then I want to see what Drew says on this too, because, okay, Tommy transfers. That's a bummer. Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily have your quarterback of the future right now, but on the other hand, Tommy looked a little rough out there in the conference championship, as we all know. His career stats at UCF, by the way, 9 of 16, 75 yards passing, no touchdowns, no picks. 14 carries, 120 yards, one famous touchdown against Temple. Like you said, this is originally G.J. Kinney's guy, who's now who's moved into Darren Hinshaw's system. We did see in the spring game more of a pocket-related approach, which I would guess, and it could be wrong, but based on what I've seen, not really Tommy's game, right? Which is fair. In Timmy McClain, you do have a quarterback who actually has a season's worth of starts under his belt. I know it was with South Florida and they were bad, but I also watched that game against us where he single-handedly kept them in it against us. So the talent is there. I really do believe, that it was just bad coaching. And like you mentioned, Darren Hinshaw hasn't actually gotten, quote, his guy yet, end quote, in recruiting. No?
So, well, and yeah, I mean, we've been saying on the pod since the season proper ended last year after the bowl game against Duke, right, Jeff, that at least Eric Lopez and I have postulated that the next quarterback on the lineup wasn't in the room yet. And that still may very well be the case, right? That's the portal giveth and taketh away. Now, the Timmy McClain single-handedly bringing his team back is a take. It could also be among one of the worst defensive performances UCF had, as well as another situation where the offense ceased to produce because JRP was in limited fashion and hurt in that game. Reason why there was an opportunity to come back is because the Knights were very poor at scoring in that game and needed the holy hauler to save the day. So before we start signing off on Timmy McClain as Jesus, let's.
Well, I'm talking about the game before that, not the holy holler game.
Oh, the previous. Well,
yeah, the one here.
So be it. I would also
snoozer.
Yeah, well, that here nor there, but your point is well taken. Nonetheless, for me, I still think we're going to get whatever the answer is for QB2 in the transfer portal somewhere. If you're a UCF fan, that would be my expectation. Timmy McClain, maybe he just doesn't fit yet. And by the way, to answer for pocket presence in the spring game, I think that was a practice that was working the stuff that needed to be worked on because it's practice. We're talking about practice, Jeff. Not a game, practice. Okay? And you and I and everybody on this panel and most UCF fans know that this is a run-first offense where they did not really run first in this particular game. A lot more throwing, whether that's a matter of injury concern or giving quarterbacks that need reps and finding accuracy, which one could certainly accuse both JRP and, at the time, Thomas Castellanos and possibly McClain himself of. I think that's why you saw a lot of that in the spring game and not necessarily reticent of what you'll see come September. I could be wrong on that, but that's where I'm speculating.
Drew, why is Kyle wrong?
Well, I want to point one thing out that neither of you actually hit. G.J. Kinney may have recruited.
Oh, he's going to tell us both why we're wrong. Okay, go ahead.
Well, G.J. Kinney may have recruited Tommy Castellanos. He has never coached Tommy Castellanos. He left before Tommy was ever there. He got the new job, moved on. So I believe it was Incarnate Word, and before he went to Texas State. So even though he was recruited, he never actually worked with each other. So I think that kind of opens up the dynamic there.
But by the way, we should clarify he hasn't committed to Texas State or anywhere else yet.
No, but he certainly there was certainly a personality connection. Whether the coach, whether the style fits or not, is still obviously up for debate. he'll latch on somewhere else. Whether he starts or not is a different story. You look at Castellanos' line. He did well against the third stringers at Temple, but when it came against someone who's actually decent, he fell on his face. There was definitely some deer in headlights. His freshman year against better competition, particularly the end of the season against Tulane in the conference championship game.
Although I think he was kind of he was. I don't think it's.
Well, he admitted he did not prepare properly
he wasn't,
during the year, and he came in and looked unprepared. But again,
he was caught going the wrong way through a revolving door against Tulane. I didn't think that was fair, and we saw what happened. I mean, they threw JRP back out there on his bad ankle,
and he had one leg.
And he did keep UCF in it,
right,
as much as he could.
Much as he could.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at his line. What was it? 2 for 8.
2 for 8 for 7 yards, sacked twice, and he had 7 rushes for -8 yards.
That was pretty bad.
Not great, Bob.
Not great, Bob.
You're not that was the first championship game. That really says I want to recruit you.
Yeah.
But then this also goes back to the whole Mikey Keene thing about when Mikey Keene was like, I'm ready to play next week, and then
here's the other thing.
He wasn't, so it was a bad situation.
Yeah.
In both cases, it was a case of overcompensating. I'm convinced Tommy Castellanos was planning on leaving after the spring game no matter what. Much like Ryan O'Keefe left after the spring game last year. Jalen Robinson. My mistake. Jalen Robinson after the spring game last year. It was planned. You're seeing it in other schools. Colorado's a great example where they're using the spring game as an opportunity to just create a little more film, a little more something to take out there.
An audition.
An audition. I think it's the plan. And so the comments you heard was overcompensating to, one, make the coaching staff feel at ease so they still put you out there and try to de-stress yourself as much as possible. So that's what I think it came down. It was a little bit of just putting too much, getting caught up in the moment. Like Mikey Keene got caught up in the moment, said a little too much, even though he was starting to formulate things in his head, realizing like, what did I just say? Oh man, oh yeah, I need to keep my red shirt. Oh crap, I'm out of eligibility. No, I'm not playing.
So here's where you're wrong, Drew. Mikey Keene was actually asked directly and was forced to answer a question. TC offered that.
Volunteered that.
Correct.
Let's see. Mikey Keene coming off the game. He was coming out of that.
No. No one's saying anything else you said. That's the one distinct difference that you need to
There is a difference there. However, it's a mental thing. As we've seen, Tommy Castellanos is not quite as refined as Mikey Keene is.
You can say he's young. That's cool.
He's young. Mikey Keene, I say, is actually a little bit ahead of his age. He holds himself with really good poise.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But he was also riding the adrenaline high at the time. Just coming out of that wild game. And so you're ready to run through a brick wall. He got a little carried away, and then after things settled, like, oh crap, what did I just say?
So, and to quote Drew, something neither of you have mentioned, and now that Eric Lopez is about to check in, it's appropriate that I mention baseball. I really think that JRP's unique doubleheader activity might have been a factor in what kept him around potentially too, Drew. I mean, I don't want to play too much conspiracy theory, but with Tommy Castellanos knowing he'd get that much more, exposure, playing time, whatever, in the spring game than he may have were JRP to participate in the full event, it's only that much more film he would get to put on. And the 7 for 13 for 105 with a long touchdown to Deontay Marks isn't terrible film.
It isn't terrible. It isn't great either. But remember, it's only a spring game. So as you said, chemistry, all of a sudden, there's a lot of moving pieces.
And it shows his improvement in development.
Right. And as we've already seen with Darren Hinshaw, footwork is a big thing that he's working with. As we've heard over time, Chip Lindsey really didn't do much with them. and it showed. You didn't have to, you compare the last games that they played versus the spring game, and you see a lot of footwork difference between Castellanos and JRP from their previous selves. I mean, there's a lot of improvement already. But you know what? Tommy wants a chance to start. He wants his, he knows he's not the guy this year. Even if he's QB2, who knows if he was going to be QB2? We don't know. But we know he wasn't going to be QB1. So he wants a chance to go somewhere else. He wants a chance to be a guy who runs. We know Hinshaw likes a little more of a deep pocket, kind of throw. Okay, go do what you got to do, son. Go be successful.
Yeah. As Drew mentioned, Lopez is here, and I kind of wanted to drop in a couple other notes. KT Thompson also now sees in the portal, along with Ethan Mort and one other two. Drew,
who?
Maldonado. He was one of the early recruits. But here's the truth: none of
these guys. I think KT Thompson had a little bit of potential going into possibly making the lineup, but.
None of these guys are in the 2-deep roster.
Yeah, none of these guys are none of those guys are in the 2-deep.
And with the players being brought in through the portal, I think they were just going to get buried. One of the benefits of the conference affiliation change is the portal has really opened the door for higher quality players to come in. In fact, last night, UCF had a big transfer out of Georgia come in.
Ryan Davis, redshirt senior linebacker. Yeah. He's
going to come in for a year. But hey, even before that, linebacker was pretty stacked now. Watch out. This is a good unit for once.
Remember back when we were worried about linebacker?
Not this year.
An area of focus last year for sure. And hey, listen, I think we could say this for the fans, everybody. Like, net positive in recruiting, at least, once again, for Gus Malzahn. Each year he set a new UCF franchise record. For each one of the 3 years he's been here, second highest recruiting class allegedly, according to 247 Sports in the Big 12, and that was before they got Ryan Davis in the building. So there you go.
Well, yeah, I think Davis is 23 eligible, so he wouldn't count in the next class. But I mean, UCF's people are like, oh, he's gonna fall on his face. You know what? It's gonna take a little time to get your depth up to speed. Depth is a bit.
You're always going to lose guys in the portal before you gain guys in the portal.
Takes away. But think about it. Who has UCF really lost outside of Ryan O'Keefe and Tatum Bethune?
Matt Lee,
Devontae Brown.
Matt Lee. Well, I was going to say
Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste.
That cannot.
That didn't go so well for you, did it, Drew?
No, I was gonna say that cannot be replaced.
Everyone in theory can be replaced.
No, but Drew's right. Drew is right. Like, Thomas Castellanos is very replaceable. You guys. I'm sure you guys were very nice to him. I will not be. He just wasn't good enough. He's just not good enough here. He had a chance.
No, that's not a good take.
The style changed.
That's not a good take.
His style doesn't fit the offense.
If he ends up where I think he's going to end up, which is, in my opinion, the minor leagues of college football, he wasn't good enough to play in the bright lights here.
I don't know that that's a great take.
Kyle, he had an opportunity. We talked about this last week. The number 2 quarterback position here is going to probably play, has a good opportunity to play with JRP's history of perhaps getting hurt.
Sure.
And you're leaving? Really?
Dude,
get out of here, man.
We had this conversation too that you agreed with, that you want guys that are high level starters, be them receivers, quarterbacks, whatever skill position they happen to be. Yeah. You want them to be that confident. If he wants to start and feels like he can be, I don't want to say guaranteed, because technically that's not allowed. Our good friend Noah Goldberg.
Wink. Right.
But an athlete like that desiring a start, especially if he feels like he got sandbagged for his red shirt, that tracks. You know what I'm saying?
But if he was any good, he would have been. And I know you guys, we argued about this back in the championship game. You said he wasn't ready. That was a bad spot. If you're good enough, like Dylan Gabriel was ready. Like Dylan Gabriel would have been ready to put in that championship game. To me, either you're good enough or you're not. And he wasn't good in that championship game. And I'm not saying it's all his fault, but I just don't think he was. I don't see him as the future of the Big 12. And go enjoy Sunbelt football.
No, and that take is fair. And listen, when if you're looking to get a guy that's going to come in and supplant a Power 5 starter and the guy that just won the championship like Dillon Gabriel did, I mean, not every quarterback's going to do that. And if you're looking for that guy, that listen, man, from that standpoint, you definitely got a point.
Well, you're going to need that. We're in the Big 12 now.
Eric,
we need the Big 12.
I do have a small bone to pick with you on that. One, we've proven that you can be a starting quarterback at a non-Power 5 team and be really good and have a great career and make it in the pros. And two, you can be a starter at a Power 5 and be worthless. It doesn't matter. It's not exclusive. So you go with what the setup is. You know, it's not that he's not good enough here. He's not right for the system.
All right, maybe that's fair.
Well, I don't know that and Drew, I'll say it this way. If the rest of the year offensively looks like what it did in the spring game, you're right. I'm not ready to declare that we know what the system is yet. That's where I'm at.
Well, it's not going to be Chip Lindsey's system, I'll tell you that. And it's not going to be a pure Malzahn system.
And wasn't Tommy Castellanos recruited by G.J. Kinney? We're like two offensive coordinators from the guy that recruited him.
And he never coached him.
Which is where Kinney now is at Texas State, which is why I think a lot of people expect him to end up there.
Yeah. Still, we'll be following that. By the way, there's one other transfer portal mention that we do have to quickly drop here with basketball. We mentioned Destiny Thomas, and now she had now to be fair, she had graduated.
Got
she
graduated.
Thank you.
Everyone knew this is the world's worst kept secret. Knows where she's going to go. She's at the University of Georgia now. She just announced yesterday.
She's at UCF North.
So
is that why Kyle's hair is just a mess? You've just been a wreck when you saw the news on social media, aren't you, Kyle?
He's hurt.
He was crying in the corner before the show started.
When people ask Kyle who hurt you, he say Destiny Thomas. That's who.
Wow.
Actually, to be honest, I'm pretty numb since the department got cleared out last year. You know, that whole situation. This was just whatever. More pain. No.
This move actually.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
This move
he's like the Hulk over there.
This move actually reminds me of literally what I was doing just now. So recently, my family moved, right? But college exams are around this time. So because of the certain situation of what was going on, I was actually able to stay in our old house for a little bit while the rest of the family moved to get ready and settled into the new house. And it looks like Destiny Thomas just went and did the exact same thing, just stayed at UCF for one more year to finish school, and now she's going to join the rest of her teammates over at UCF.
You're saying you gave her the idea. You gave her the idea.
No. I did this.
Kyle, you know
I thought he was going to say he was transferring.
Well, let's be honest though. Brittany Smith and Diamond Battles, they're done at Georgia.
Yeah,
Diamond Battles
is a WNBA declaree.
No, they don't have a year left. They're both done.
Well, lost. She said she was playing for WNBA and doing all
right. But like when Desto gets there, she's not going to find Diamond Battles and Brittany Smith to play alongside.
But still, you're in the SEC in Georgia, and she's hoping to have the success that Diamond in particular had. They both had great success. Her and Brittany had great success. Georgia got to the NCAAs, and she couldn't fill it.
I'm totally cool with grad transfers. I think it's
cool
for an opportunity.
Yeah.
It's cool for an opportunity.
It's the right move for her. There was nothing else for her left to do
and
here.
You get a new experience.
Yeah, she got her degree. You go get your master's somewhere else, just like every other person who goes and gets their master's. That's fine.
But
the nothing left to do is a bad defense. You're going into the Big 12. You can challenge your skills in what people allege to be the best conference.
But you're also going to the SEC, which is a better league. The SEC is the toughest league in women's basketball, and you're playing for the coach that recruited you.
Well, okay, that's a better situation. No one's questioning that.
Yeah.
I hate that you can't do anything here in 20.
Well, what I mean is that she literally got her degree here.
Yeah,
she's won conference championships here. So she's accomplished a lot. Like she's done pretty well for herself.
If anything, this season proves what she can do without Diamond and Brittany there. I mean, this season really shows what Desto can do when you really let her do her thing. And now that she's going to Georgia, where, like you said, Diamond and Brittany are going to be gone, Abe can look at the game tape from this season and be like, all right, this is a really cool way that I could use Desto this season.
That's the point I wanted to build on too, especially you with your Georgia colors on today, Bryson.
Wow.
Destiny
Wow.
Thomas became more than just a posting and rebound threat as he continued to. Yes, I know it's painful, Jeff, but the piece that needs to be added is Desto became not just a better basketball player, but a better athlete overall. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but she was making more athletic plays to get steals. She had, 16 double-doubles throughout the season.
Over 300 rebounds.
Abe's, yeah, thank you, Bryson. 300 rebounds. This is, I want to say it's around 7th all-time. I could be wrong there. But Abe always said in post-game, talking about Destiny Thomas before she left for Georgia, that she could be this piece. She was just waiting for her to open up. And then under Coach Messer, Desto did that. There may have been some conflict there or not. That's a whole other question. But the punchline being, Destiny Thomas is a completely new animal that even has skills over and above what Abe would have taught her. Abe is not only getting the benefit of her own, getting a player with her own tutelage and experience in her system, but somebody who has a bit more pepper and more of an all-around player. Destiny Thomas looks more like Brittany Smith as a player than she has ever before. What better way to bring in Brittany Smith's replacement in Georgia?
So you're saying she might have a shot to start in Georgia?
I am.
Okay.
For the record, for people that can't see, I am currently wearing a red Under Armour shirt. Kyle,
I said your Georgia colors. I didn't say it had a big giant ski on.
this is not Georgia red. Come on.
Isn't it?
Doesn't Georgia require black? Isn't it black and red their colors?
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, red and black. Yeah.
Anyway.
So anyway, that's where we're at. But I think the conclusion of that is we weren't all that surprised. She's gotten her degree. She's moving on to Georgia. Best of luck to Desto, and thanks for everything that she did for us. She was a great player for us.
I'm
all right,
let's not watch her anymore over here at Edition, man. That's all.
Yeah. All right, moving along
give him
to
a hug. Give Kyle a hug. Give him
It's gonna be okay, buddy. It's gonna be okay.
All right,
It's
we'll
not your fault.
Yeah. Moving over to baseball. I wanted to talk about UCF baseball here for a hot second because Eric, you were right. After and Drew too. After UCF addressed that flack that we had earlier, look at that. They've now won 6 of their last 8, including taking 2 of 3 from South Florida in Tampa over the weekend, and head into a big home 3-game set this weekend against Houston in what I think is actually a pretty good position right now. And I want to pull up these standings just to kind of give you an overall idea. So UCF has 12 games left against conference opponents. And like you said last week, Eric, the conference is down this year. But that's good for UCF because you have Wichita State and Houston tied at the top at 8-4, ECU at 7-5, 1 game back. I bet none of us thought that would happen. South Florida at 6-6, and then UCF, Cincy, Tulane tied at 5-7 in the league, a 3-way tie for 5th. But that's just 3 games back of first and just 2 games back of being tied for second or third. So, UCF is right in the thick of this thing right now, especially after doing what they had to against South Florida, 2 out of 3 on the road. You look back at some of those losses during the slide and you think, man, if only they'd kept it together at that point. But they have 3 against Houston this weekend, 3 at Tulane. Tulane's 5-7. 3 at Cincy, who's 5-7, and then 3 against Wichita. So their destiny all of a sudden, Elo, is in their own hands, isn't it?
Well, it's a wacky year in the league. Obviously, the big story in the conference was Wichita State sweeping East Carolina. Nobody saw that coming.
No.
At all.
At least of all, East Carolina.
Yeah.
Game changer.
So, this league's wide open. Obviously, it's going to come down to Clearwater, who gets the automatic bid. But, it's a crapshoot. And the good news for UCF is they're 3 back of Wichita State and Houston, who are in first place. And they still have them both on the schedule, with Houston coming this weekend. So, this team is now 6-2 in the last 8 games, Drew, because I got to give you credit, Drew. You mentioned this a couple weeks ago, and even last week we talked about it with all the stuff that came out a couple weeks ago and all the drama there. Ever since all that's come out, this has been a different baseball team. big takeaway this weekend, Cam Leiter, 3 great outings in a row. Started on Sunday, was fantastic. Looks like, I remember Greg Lovelady told me and Bryson before the season when we had him on the show, if for them to be a team that can compete for a conference championship and make the NCAAs, Cam Leiter had to be a big factor in this staff, and he's starting to seem to have turned the corner over there. That's huge with him and Rody Gomez. And the offense can score. John Rice Plumlee had a big game Sunday, which we were just talking about. Plumlee, 3 RBIs. I think the best baseball is with this team. Hopefully they're peaking at the right time, Drew.
Well, I mean, they had to peak at some point. But as I said before...
Well, you hoped it wasn't in the first weekend, but anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was before things kind of, the mental anguish of what was going on was clouding over the team. They're free. They're free to do their thing. And as I said going in, it was going to make a difference. It has made a difference. And you even look at the games that they lost. They weren't, it was I like to point out, they're both Saturday games. What does that have in common? What do they do on Saturday? They dress in those awful uniforms and they lose.
Right.
So you know what?
It's the uniform's fault. Anyway.
I agree with Drew on that. I don't argue with Drew on
trash.
Uniforms. I don't agree with it. I don't
You
argue.
get rid of those things, I think Saturday would come out a lot different.
Yeah.
Because look at how Friday and Sunday are working out. That they won in 8 innings against USF on Sunday, double digiting them 11-1. And
maybe it's the detergent they use. I don't know.
Maybe maybe they should stop using the substitute detergent and go to Top. Stop washing those things in
well, what surprises me is
what
surprises me is they wear it on the road too. It's like one thing, it's a promotion thing at home. We can't get out of it, but they still wear them on the road. I agree with you. Just change it up. Just change it up. Change it up. I mean, and baseball in particular is such a superstitious sport. Just change it up. See what happens.
John Giuliano came out and said, "Get rid of those awful things."
He's important.
They changed up the rotation this week, and look what happened.
Yeah.
And you know what? Saturday still sucked. So you know what? There's got to be something else here, and I think it's the fact that those things are so garish and attached to losing. You put those on, and you're like the 2003 Chicago Cubs. You find ways to lose at that point.
Wow.
3-6 on Saturdays this year. 3-6.
Yeah, that's not good because you look at the other days of the week and they're pretty good. Once you got past the losing streak, you take the losing streak out, which obviously
20-11 on non-Saturdays.
Yeah, it's not bad. But you take that losing streak out from when the worst of the whole scandal was kind of hanging over them, and you go from the Dartmouth series earlier, and you go from Stetson on the 11th down, and you have a completely different team on non-Saturdays.
You make the point. 1/6 of the last 8. The only 2 losses were the only Saturday games they played.
I'm telling you, there's something there, and you know what? Change it up.
So this moves us forward to the Houston series at home, and and Bryson, you had mentioned Drew Farreau, 4 for 4 with a grand slam. And Bryson, you also correction for me 3-7 on Saturdays. What was the one that I missed? Was it?
I think you just missed this one, or maybe you missed somewhere higher in the schedule. But
because the ECU one wasn't on a Saturday. That was a Thursday doubleheader. But
that might be what I'm thinking.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, 3-6. See, there you go.
3-6, but game 2s. Saturday was just on Thursday.
You're thinking game 2. Anyway,
but to Drew's point, they did wear those Citronauts on that Friday as well. So,
and they lost.
So, yeah, there you go. Drew's got
Friday. So really, it's game 2s then. All right, but Fridays or Friday's game against Houston. This turns into a big one now. Because, like we mentioned, Wichita State doing what they did is one thing, but, they're still tied with Houston at the top of the conference, Eric. And it is in a situation where, the American is not very good RPI-wise. Houston, there's a big gap still between ECU and Houston, and ECU dropped precipitously. I haven't even looked at the RPI for baseball, but...
They're 117th.
Yeah, 117. So that's not going to really help all that. So UCF's 117.
UCF's at 117.
Yeah, you got to win the conference.
Houston
tournament.
is at 101.
Got to win the conference tournament, which means you got to set yourself up.
And I think they're doing a pretty good job of starting to get the getting a groove going, because as you guys know, baseball is a game of momentum. You get momentum going and things just happen because a lot of it is confidence and focus. So you get that going and things happen.
The question is, Bryson, I'm going to toss it to you in this one, Bryson. Where the starting rotation? I mentioned Leiter. I think Leiter's now back in the rotation after his last 3 outings, going back to Stetson and DeLand and that midweek start. Good start on Sunday. You got Rudy Gomez on Friday, but what's the answer on a Saturday? Because they try some different things here, Bryson. Where do we go from here?
Well, Leiter reminds me, by the way, if you want to have a comparison, he reminds me of Hunter Patterson, actually, from back in 2021, because back during that year, Hunter Patterson kind of got off to a rough start, went to the bullpen for a while, worked things out, and then stepped up later on in the season and ended up being one of the centerpiece pitchers of the UCF rotation. Now, is he going to be a centerpiece pitcher? Who knows? But as far as the opening goes, that means this leaves 3 pitchers that have really started a lot this season for that Saturday slot, and that is Ben Vespi, Dom Stagliano, and Jacob Marlowe. Now, Ben Vespi, I think is better served as a bullpen pitcher. Both times now that Ben Vespi has started, things have gone very poorly, including this weekend, where he started and got in the first 2 innings and gave up 7 runs on 6 hits. So I think the solution here is that Ben Vespi just needs to be brought out from the bullpen. And to be fair, he's done very well out of the bullpen. So that leaves Stagliano and Marlowe. And I would honestly say Stagliano has been a better starter and Marlowe has been a better reliever. And this is just based on pure history, by the way. So perhaps Marlowe might have a start. It could depend on matchups could also play a role in that as well. But I think more than likely the Saturday slot is going to be between Stagliano and Marlowe, and then after that it's really a coach's choice. If you were to ask me, I would go with Stagliano because Marlowe is better served out the bullpen. But we shall see. If anything, this, like you said, change it up. And I think that considering that winning the conference tournament is the priority, the time from here to now, yes, you still need to set yourself up, but it's also a really good time to be able to play around with some things so that way you're at your best possible play when you go into the conference tournament, because getting that momentum at the end of the season is going to be what could carry this team into the postseason. All
right. Well, we will see how they do against Houston this week in this huge 3-game series. Meanwhile, over to softball. What a weekend it was for UCF going to South Florida and or playing against South Florida, I should say, at home, and just taking care of business in 3 close games. We knew they'd be close. Their last chance against South Florida, ELO, and they sweep them in all 3. 8-inning victory on Friday, 3-1, 2-0 Saturday, Sunday, respectively. And here's the current situation for UCF softball. They have 6 games left, 3 at Houston, 3 at home against Houston this weekend, 3 at Memphis the following weekend. So that's 6 games left. Because of the uneven numbers of teams in the American, Wichita State, who is in first place, 1 game ahead of UCF in the loss column, I should say, at 13-2. Wichita 40-8 overall, by the way. Wow, what a year they've been having. Wichita has only 1 conference series left, and that's at Tulsa, who's 20-23, 6-6 overall. Wichita's RPI is 21, UCF's RPI is 30, so both those teams, ideally, Eric, barring something disastrous happening, should get in regardless. But UCF wants to take that regular season crown just as much as anybody. But they have ground to make up, and correct me if I'm wrong here, they need help in order to get that done, right?
Yeah, I mean, Wichita State's at Tulsa. That's their big rival this weekend. UCF would have to win out and need Wichita to lose the Tulsa series to win the regular season title outright. If Wichita were to drop a game and UCF were to win out, they would share the regular season title. Wichita would still get the tiebreaker because of the head-to-head, so they would still be the 1 seed. UCF would be the 2 seed. And that is significant because the 1 seed gets to bye into the semifinals in Tampa in a few weeks. So I would say, but for UCF, and more importantly, they just got to keep winning and playing well because Houston and Memphis will not help the RPI or the resume. So if you drop a game to any of those teams, especially Memphis, who's just in the 240s RPI.
Yeah, they're bad. 8 and 35 and 2 and 10 in conference.
That puts you in trouble a little bit there. So they just got to keep winning. In that regard, you mentioned the RPI 30. That's in good shape. I think that's about as high as they're going to get. They're probably going to drop a few spots here in the next couple of weeks. Thankfully, this will be the last year we have to worry about teams in the league hurting your resume instead of helping. It's a great concept to go to be at a conference that actually helps you. So it's amazing. It's a beautiful thing. I can't wait. Okay, we just get to the Big 12 here soon enough. But the big star has been the pitching. Gave up 2 runs to South Florida in 3 games, the fewest runs any UCF team's ever given up to South Florida. Sarah Willis, 2 wins, gives up 1 run, making a push for pitcher of the year in the American. She's number 1 in the American in ERA. Grace Jewell pitched 5 innings in the Saturday win. Got the save on Sunday. Caitlin Felton, which they've kind of just now used her kind of as a reliever, got the save on Saturday. So the pitching, they have now in 11 of the last 12 games, UCF's given up 2 runs or less. And then offensively, USF, give them credit. They're well-pitched team. Gabriella Nori is a great pitcher. But Chloe Evans was the difference. She got the sac fly to tie the game up on Friday, the game-winning RBI on Friday night in the bottom of the 8th. Got the big hit on Sunday to drive in the 2 runs. We were talking about the transfers early, and people asked me this. How about Sydney Ball-Malone and her transfer additions? Chloe Evans, who's probably going to be the first-team all-conference performer, leads the Knights in hitting, batting average, hits, RBIs, total bases in right field. You got Sarah Willis, who's kind of that co-number 1, could be pitcher of the year this year, and Jasmine Williams at shortstop, who's having a great year defensively and has been productive offensively. That's a 3-for-3 home runs on the transfer portal. Fresh off last year when they added Kamal Woodall, we know what she meant in that championship historic season last year. I think Coach Bubble knows how to evaluate players on the portal. I would say so. So that's been huge for them. And obviously the Knights getting their 800th win on Sunday, which is in a short period of time. That's insane. So it's a big sweep. They've won 11 in a row in the rivalry, which goes back to the famous Coach Paul Malone suicide squeeze call with Jada Cody in the 2021 game when they came from behind to beat South Florida. They haven't lost since then. So that's been a really great weekend. The big story, obviously, what's going to happen to this rivalry moving forward? Now, it's worth pointing out these 2 teams could still play in the conference tournament in a few weeks in Tampa. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they do, because I think they're going to end up in the same draw. But what about after this year? One of Bryson's media friends, asked Coach Ball Malone about that after the game on Sunday. And she said, yes, the rivalry will continue. They're still figuring out how to do it because there's multiple ways to scheduling this. They could just do a traditional home-and-home midweek. They might do something where one plays in the other's tournament, or they may just do a flat-out one midweek. But they're going to continue to play this rivalry moving forward. So that was the big news on the post game on Sunday, which you can check out on the YouTube channel on Black and Gold Banneret.
We'll come back to that in a second, Eric. I wanted to see that pretty interesting stat here that I pulled up in the team stats. In conference play only, UCF's pitching staff is holding their opponents to a 191 average, tops in the league. They're the only team's pitching staff holding the opponents under 225. So that shows you kind of where they've been, in terms of finding it. It's a shame that, because they gave up a lot of runs in the early portion of the season, that their team ERAs kind of suffered. Wichita is having a pretty good year too, in their pitching staff. I think in conference play they're showing 1.96 team ERA. Overall, Wichita's team ERA leads the American at 2.32, and Wichita is also hitting as a team 335 this year. So Yeah, say what you want about the numbers and what they've been able to do Wichita this year, but UCF was right with them. It's just that there's just this gap right now, and that's showed itself in the standings.
UCF played a much tougher non-conference schedule, and look, it takes a while for people to grow into their roles. There was not a lot of experience. It takes a while to develop, and but they're starting to click in a different level. I think Sarah Willis, the big thing there is she's become more just exclusively a pitcher. She'll still pinch hit here and there. They've kind of stopped her using her as a two-way player, and I think what that's done is I think Coach Mullen decided we need you more as a pitcher. Number one. Number two, let's just focus on the pitching because that's the most valuable position, and it's worked. She's been a different pitcher since then. I think it's simplified some things for her and I remember Coach Gillespie did the same thing with Shelby Turnier in 2014, where my voice is just like Coach Paul Malone's on Sunday, where I have no voice. But Shelby was a two-way player, and then after a while, Coach Gillespie decided let's just focus on the pitching. She turned into an all-American pitcher, top 10 player of the year finalist, and one of the greats in the history of the program. Hopefully we're in the same track with Sarah Willis because she is filthy. Right, Nick? You were there. She is filthy when she's clicking with that changeup and mixing the speeds with her 71-mile-an-hour pitch.
Yeah, she killed it. That was she was the best player in that game, in my opinion.
Yeah, now they got to come up big this weekend against Houston, like you were saying, Eric. Take care of business. Friday at 6, Saturday at 4, Sunday at 12. Obviously, we'll be seeing them again next year. And then it's those last 3 against Memphis. I think, obviously, Wichita just has their one remaining conference slate against Tulsa coming up. But then I think, don't they have Oklahoma State too coming up or somebody?
We have Oklahoma in a midweek.
Oklahoma in midweek, okay.
Yeah. So, but
good luck with that.
Houston's a dangerous team. I mean, Kenna Wilkie was the preseason pitcher of the year pick. She has about, I believe, 14 of the 19 wins. I expect a lot of Kenna Wilkie this weekend for Houston. That's going to be a challenge for this Knights offense, which is kind of, had trouble against the South Florida pitching. So Houston's capable. They beat Wichita State at Wichita State. Wilkie shut them out at Wichita. So this is not easy. Even though the Houston record's not good, part of their problem with Houston is they have no depth pitching-wise. But Wilkie is dangerous. So, you got to try to – and I think it's a big series. If the Knights can just win this series, they pretty much lock up at least the 2 seed. So we'll see what happens there moving forward. But, Bryson, don't wear those that are Under Armour this weekend in any part.
No.
Georgia colors,
not allowed.
Colors.
Yeah.
Burn it.
So,
What?
Burn it.
I mean, geez, I did not expect
Burn it.
But the rivalry will continue, Jeff, which is obviously because we wrote about this, Black Eagle Banneret. We do a poll on all the sports in the future because that was it. This was this past weekend.
Yeah, and I want to get into this. And I want to get into this real quick, while we have it, because you dropped this excellent column, Eric, and if you haven't read it, folks, you really need to. And we set up a couple polls on this, and we went through each sport, each team sport on our sister site, on our co-site, sister site, whatever, Black and Gold Banneret, and provided a stupid loop. Get out of there. Okay. We looked at every sport and you gave your take, Eric, and about which sports UCF should continue to play USF in after we leave them behind and move to the Big 12. And then we put a poll up, and I just wanted to go through them real quickly. Volleyball, you said no, the fans agree. Soccer, you said yes, the fans agree on both soccers, by the way. Tennis, you said yes, fans overwhelmingly agree. Here's where it got interesting. Basketball. Eric, you said no on the men. The fans are pretty split. Right now it's 52 no, 48 yes. What do you think is behind that?
I'm a little surprised by that myself. I would have expected that more on the football side than basketball. I think part of it is it is a close drive, right? You go to Tampa, you get to play a basketball game. I guess they like that aspect of it. Reason I said no is USF hasn't been very good. And if you're UCF, you don't really benefit on the court from playing them in Tampa. Look, and I'm basing all these decisions in part in South Florida demanding for UCF to play at USF. In other words, USF's not going to agree. I think we all can agree on this. USF will not agree to sure, we'll just play in UCF all the time. No, that's not going to happen. So
I'm curious. I have a thought. I think there's a little recency bias at play here. I think if we had beaten South Florida twice this year, the fans would say overwhelmingly no.
Fair. Yeah.
That's definitely part of it.
You think that's part of it, Nick?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, honestly, I'm split about it yourself. Like, the thing that stuck out to me was in the column when Eric says, can you name one notable game from that series? And honestly, I can't. But I will say, every time we do play them, it does, at least on campus, it does kind of feel like a big deal.
The intensity is there.
Yeah, there is a real intensity. And I think part of that could be because, at least as far as this year's concerned, didn't really know which way it was going to go. Like, both teams equally could have won it. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, who do we really benefit by playing them? A team that just fired their coach, who didn't do anything, and now they're still trying to build that program.
Yeah, they got a new head coach coming over from Kennesaw. And look, I also want to preface this: unlike football, these other sports, you could schedule, a year in advance or two. In other words, so if programs change, this could change also. Like if USF actually ever gets a basketball program, that's decent in the men's side, then I'll be more open to playing them. But you're not going to benefit playing them in the resume based on USF's history in men's hoops.
Of course, that could change. I mean, they could get good.
Right.
So, speaking of recent history, women's basketball. You said no. The fans are currently saying no. But again, that's split too. Although a little bit less split than men's, 58-42 no. And that's because you make a good argument. USF's good under Jose Fernandez. You said that there's no real benefit for UCF. You can this is one of those things where in this matchup you can really only lose because
right now I think if you're Cynthia Messer and UCF, you got to build your program up. You're going to the Big 12. Last thing you need is go down and play USF and get beat up again. Look, this has never been a rival
by a team that would be in the American
Conference,
and you're in the Big 12 and
right. Now, if UCF could build it back up, then you could revisit that. Look, the only time this has been, South Florida has dominated this rivalry, except when Coach Abe was here. And again, it goes back to when she got here, that changed drastically. It's very even. You had contrast of styles. The USF fans hated the fact UCF played zone, etc. That was fun. We don't have that right now. I think right now UCF's got to focus on building themselves up. And if you're Jose Fernandez in South Florida, he's going to schedule other people as well. So I'm not sure there's a big benefit right now for those two to play because, again, UCF's not in a position where they're better than USF, quite honestly. Now, that could change in a year or two. They're not better than USF in women's basketball. I think anybody that follows that would know that.
Yeah. At least not right now.
Right now, right.
Skip ahead to baseball and softball. Yes on both counts.
Softball, I think it's the highest percentage of yes, correct?
I think 84%. Or one of the other ones maybe had a higher. Maybe soccer was in the 80s, but softball was the highest one.
Yeah, not a surprise. Not a surprise. Yep. I think with softball, there's great history. I think it's the most accomplished rivalry. In other words, it's like there's always legitimately something's on the line usually when they play, whether it's a conference championship, maybe an tournament match. There's been a lot of history with some of the other rivalries sports are not the case. So that makes a ton of sense. Both teams are usually very good. You're pretty much guaranteeing a top 50 game most every year. So that makes a ton of sense. The baseball one's interesting because they have benefited from the conference. They have played twice for the conference championship. In 2017, the regular season title came down to the last weekend conference series between UCF and USF when the conference, I think, got it right scheduling wise. Knights won it on the last day. Then USF got the revenge in Clearwater in the championship game in 2021. There's obviously a little spice to it this year without getting into it, but we all know what's been transpired with all the stuff over the last few weeks, and I think USF played a role in that. So there's a little spice there. I mean, we even saw it if you followed the series this weekend. Let's just say there wasn't a lot of friendly handshakes. So we'll see what happens with that, but that's got a little spice to it, so which is why I'm good with them playing moving forward. A 3-game series, sounds like Greg Levity's told me and Bryson before the year that was the schedule plan at the time. So I'm for it on the baseball softball side. I feel the most confident those two will, especially softball, will continue. In fact, Coach obviously mentioned that in the post game.
Yeah.
I mean, at
which
worst,
takes us. Go ahead, Bryson.
at worst, that's another midweek opportunity for
Right,
baseball.
exactly.
Because over the course of this season, you know, Coach Lovelady has really taken advantage of those midweek opportunities with Florida teams like FSU, UNF, Stetson, Bethune-Cookman. So even if you don't get a weekend series with USF in there, you could easily have like maybe 3 games as midweeks over the course of the year, like they can do with those teams.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's an excellent point. That takes us to football, gentlemen. And this is a little bit more split along the lines that than we initially thought. Eric, you are a hard no on this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I've made my thoughts clear on it, many times out there. Now, you make an ironclad case for no. Ironclad case. I mean, I can't argue with you on that. What I will do is, as I usually say, play devil's advocate. And here's why I think the fans are kind of split. 58 right now, it's 58-42 no. Voting is going to be open for another week on this because we want to get as many people in here thinking about this. Go to blackandgoldbanneret.com, click on Eric's story and vote.
Vote, everybody.
Here's why I think some fans are saying yes. Number one, that this game still has that juice that you were talking about with baseball. Right? It still has that bitterness that it does. Come on. It does. All right? We want to get them.
That's fake. That's fake. That's fake. The softball is legit. The football is fake. That game hasn't mattered in 6 years in the big picture. You're talking big picture, but between these two schools,
between two of us, it does matter, man.
It does matter. It does matter. We don't like them. They don't like us, and it's not like that between.
Yeah, you know what? We don't like
any other school.
Yeah, and we don't like Florida State, and Florida State doesn't like us. Doesn't mean they play.
It's different. It's just different. Yes.
All right, let me ask you this: ask the fan. Would you rather play South Florida or Florida State if you could pick? If you had the.
Of course you would play Florida State.
Okay, thank you.
That's not the question that's being asked.
Well, yes.
The question that's being asked is should we at some point continue to play USF football? Here's the other thing. I think this is what the fans are really saying here is
the minority
is a rather close minority.
Sure.
The fans are saying, look, we're going to need 3 non-conference games at some point, not immediately, but eventually. All right. It's a short trip. First of all, we wouldn't go over there. We would get them over here. And second of all, why not beat them like a rented mule in the early part of the season?
Okay, why would South Florida agree to that?
Why wouldn't they agree to it?
Because they're like, no,
we should go home and home. They're not doing well right now.
It's the same argument from the other side.
Because they're gonna be like, hey, we can go play you and punch up.
A USF will never agree to that. They will never agree to just coming to UCF all the time. Just like fans got livid. Like
maybe they should.
UCF will never go to Florida exclusively, right? Like, there's no way that you make that deal if you're USF. You're just not going to do that. First of all, USF, they got to worry about just building up their football program, period.
Eric, you're implying USF is actually running their program competently, though. I mean, let's be fair.
I think some of this was.
That. I didn't want to.
Well, I think some of this is not Michael Kelly. I mean, some of this is around Michael Kelly and all that stuff. But there's only 3 games. If you're USF, if you're going to do a bye game, which is basically what you're suggesting, is they take a bye game with UCF, they can make more money playing somebody else from a Power 5, like Alabama, for example, where they got a 2-for-1. They're going to get more money playing Alabama, things like that. It doesn't benefit USF just coming to UCF at all. At all. They won't agree to that. And it doesn't benefit UCF either, because you want to be creative if you're UCF with your 3 games. You mentioned it. They only have 3 games. Slots. You're not going to just lock one spot to South Florida every year, especially because they're going to hurt your resume, because you want to make the playoffs if you're UCF. And the last thing you need to do is, you have a weak non-conference schedule. You played that team that played 1-2 games. That's the problem. If USF was decent in football, I would hear it out. But they've been atrocious. I mean, they're one of the worst football programs right now. And Alex Golish has got his work cut out for him.
Yep.
And I think
Right
that's what
now,
he needs to focus
to be
on.
fair.
You know, this is the inverse of we were just talking about women's basketball and how USF's program is in a really
Agreed.
good spot, and UCF
Yes.
isn't. This is basically the exact
Yes.
opposite.
Agreed.
Where
100%
USF's
agree.
football program, like, how about you go and get good, and then we'll talk.
Exactly. Great line, Bryson. 100%. Agree.
Okay.
Look,
I mean, that's
I'm not
that's
saying
fair.
it has to be dead forever. I mean,
By the way-
UCF leads the rivalry 8-6. It's still very close overall
but
in football.
but
You
once-
let the
It's
rivalry
really
simmer for a little
8-2.
bit, Let it rest
that's
for a
what we
little
ran- won
bit,
6
and then
in a
once
row.
USF handles its business, you bring it back, and all of a sudden it's not only the animosity is still there, but it's also the hard numbers show a very even rivalry. Once we're back on even footing again, relatively.
Look here. In my opinion, here's why it's so close. It's sentimentality reason. It's nostalgia. Like, and ultimately,
That's a factor.
it's because
What
of the sport.
nostalgia? What? That Mackenzie Melton literally lost his leg? That's not nostalgic to me.
No,
Sorry.
that's anger. That's anger.
That's the second most
We don't
memorable
talk about
moment of
that.
this matchup. That's
Okay,
the most
but look,
memorable thing.
what out of all the sports, and this is because it's football. But like, which sport has gotten the most attention? Which one? And I would argue.
That doesn't make it a rivalry, though.
It's
That's
I
a
know,
forced
but
media narrative.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying I think this is why it's so close. Like, what other sport has had like the most iconic moments? Which one has had a game like the 2017 game? Which one has had the holler catch?
Softball, soccer.
I know,
Both of them
but-
have had much more memorable.
But
baseball.
Eric, you
More popular, man. I love
that,
that.
there's God bless you. There's that, and then there's football.
Yeah, that's because the
And you admit that yourself all the time.
But that doesn't make it a rivalry, and that doesn't mean you have to play it. There's more memories.
I know,
have more
I
memories
know.
of UCF
I know.
Cincinnati.
Just
UCF
saying.
Cincinnati have
Just
more
saying.
notable moments than USF.
Can we
did.
just acknowledge though how much the tables have turned that we're saying this? Like, wasn't it like years ago USF was saying this about us when they were trying to like?
Oh yeah.
But that was
Of course.
different. But the difference there was they were trying to block UCF from going to the Big East.
Yeah, I know, but
So they
still, they're like,
decided
oh man,
not
we're
to
not
play.
doing anything. We got to play
But
bigger games.
This rivalry hasn't been good. Like UCF nearly had one of the worst loss in the history of this program last year, blowing that 28-0 lead against a 1-win USF team. You're not benefiting from that. That wasn't enjoyable. That was miserable. You don't gain from that.
Those emotional swings are what make rivalries, man.
Emotional
Those are
about
making
what?
fun.
What?
It's a rivalry.
Yeah, you know what that does? That gets people fired. That's what
I
that
know.
does.
Oh,
Look, I think ultimately
didn't
what
get
it-
anyone for UCF
I
fired.
think people
Because
are
they barely
afraid.
won.
I think people are afraid that if we don't play them, will we find a rivalry that's as intense?
Yes, you will. It's called
I
the
think we will.
conference.
I do think we will. I just don't think others think that. That's why I think it's so close.
Yeah.
I think
How
Houston.
I disagree with you, Eric.
how
I
rare do you
disagree
find a
with you. Just
rival
saying.
that are how rare do you find rivals though that are separated by such far geographic
Yeah,
distances?
that is
Because-
true.
Because rivalries usually happen with teams that are within
It's-
close proximity of each other.
Well, then let's play
Florida,
Stetson every year.
Allen,
Stetson will
Stanford.
come here. Let's just go ahead and play Stetson.
It's
Let's play Bethune while we're at it.
No, I mean-
let's go with that.
Listen,
Look, obviously
you can't deny geography is a little bit of a factor here. I also think that there are some UCF fans, whether you like it or not, Eric, that look at that and say, you know what? If we did play them non-conference even every year, hey, that's at least a road game I can go to because we're not going to have those every year all the time.
That doesn't make sense for UCF. Not when you have 9 games in the conference. In every other year, you're going to have 5 road games. So if you're Terry Mahajer and the UCF, you want to make sure you get 6 home games every year. You can't do that playing a home and home against South Florida and then leave yourself with 2 spots.
No,
open.
you're right.
True.
I just say make them play here every year and be like,
And
if you don't
USF
want to,
will
take a
not.
hike.
And Michael Kelly would get fired if he agreed to that.
Yeah, but then you know what, Michael Kelly, have fun playing FIU.
That's why the USF.
Well, they
needs
do.
to
They
get
should.
good. They just need to get
Where's
good,
that
and then
there?
we
That's
can talk.
right. Bryson's made the point. Get yourself to be a decent football program, then we can talk. And because then there's a benefit to both parties playing.
So-
the game. There's no
So
benefit to UCF playing.
let me put you in. Let me posit this to you.
Yeah.
Let's say it's 2030. USF has
Will he make it?
Somehow turn the ship. All right, they've been to 5-6 bowl games in a row. They've won a couple of American Athletic Conference championships. They finished in the top 25 3 or 4 times. They're back where their biggest fans envisioned them being, sort of like, knocking, kind of like where Cincinnati is. Well, maybe not where Cincinnati is, but where, where Houston is, right? In the American over the last several years. They're kind of knocking on the door. They come to UCF and say, hey, let's think about getting, they come to you, UCF Athletic Director Eric Lopez, and say, hey, let's think about firing the war back up again. What do you say? What are your terms?
Well, first of all, what conference am I in? How many teams are in the conference? How many playoff teams? There's a lot of things. We have 12 team playoff. UCF's in the Big 12 with 9 conference games. USF's still in the American. 2 for 1. Come here twice. You go over there once.
Yeah, that sounds fair.
Yeah.
Okay,
well,
leave it.
Okay, but what about an option? What about an option to continue it? No.
No, sorry, we got a home and home with Miami and then Florida State. So take it or leave it. 2 for 1.
What if we
come out of that?
What if you don't? What if you don't have those scheduled games with Miami, Florida State?
Well, we got this
because we don't right now. I mean, aside from Florida, but
we got Florida right now. We're not dropping Florida, that's for sure.
And maybe something could come out of that Florida series. So maybe if we did a 2 for 1 against USF, something could come out of that.
Yeah. I mean, you'd be more open to it. To your point. Now, again, it's hard to predict the future because, again, I think conferences are going to look totally different in 2030 than now. In fact, hey, you know what? Maybe if USF actually takes care of their athletic department, maybe they'll be back with us at some point in some weird conference.
Yeah, honestly, I was going to say.
Or maybe USF will be dominating the FCS level in 2030. And we'll play them as a homecoming.
Yeah, honestly, Jeff, I was going to say, you're a real funny guy, man. USF winning 5 conference titles.
Yeah,
I didn't say that. I'm saying they've been to bowl games, say 5-6 years in a row, won a couple of conference titles.
Still, that's very funny.
It is very amusing too.
Do
they have a stadium? Will they have an on-campus stadium by then?
Maybe. I don't know.
That's another factor, right?
Maybe. Now keep in mind, because here's the other thing people forget. Let's just say they did schedule. They wouldn't play on Thanksgiving weekend because the UCF Big 12, you have to play a conference game Thanksgiving weekend.
That's right.
So you're going to probably play in September.
I'm cool with that. I'm sick of Thanksgiving.
A rivalry is a rivalry no matter when you
It's not a rivalry. Stop calling it. Because Mike Bianchi writes a column about it doesn't make it a rivalry.
This rivalry started in September, Eric, back in the early it started in September. If anything, the Thanksgiving thing was the new thing.
Eric, just because you say it's not a rivalry doesn't make it not a rivalry.
No, but here's the thing.
Man, we hate that school. That is a rivalry, man.
No, but here's the other point you just brought up, Jeff. Here's the underlining point. You know who helps make these games? Television. You know which hasn't drawn viewers the last few years?
South
Florida. Particular game. Yeah. Trust me, if TV said to both schools, we want this game to be played, it would get played. TV doesn't want this game to get played.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Viewership ain't there. It ain't there. It drew a monster game
for FAU versus FIU, but that's a rivalry. Those two schools.
I actually think FAU UCF actually would be a better game.
I mean, the 2017 game proved that if this rivalry is good, people will watch it.
One game, it worked out. It's kind of like that. A blind squirrel. It happened.
Every time we played FAU, we take that stadium over.
That's right. I'd rather play FAU. I think Tom Herman. I think Florida Atlantic is going to be a better program than South Florida anyway. So if you're UCF,
while I agree with you right now, that's a different conversation. That's a conversation we need to bring Noah Goldberg in on, by the way.
Yeah, sorry, Noah, I don't.
No, seriously, is if you're UCF, you want to schedule home games for business reasons, obviously.
Yeah.
But number two, you don't want to schedule too soft where you get left out of this 12-team playoff. There just isn't room right now. Maybe the sport landscape will change. Who knows? Yeah. But it just doesn't make any sense to play. You're handcuffing.
Yeah, but you also can't play. All 12 games be murderers row. You need some You need a
Right.
cupcake
So what I
here
think
and
will
there.
happen, I think the formula is going to be 2 of those 3 games every year will be guaranteed home games. One of them being an FCS game. And then that third game, you're going to kind of rotate it with maybe a quality opponent. I think that's the formula moving forward. And that's why you can't schedule USF every year. Now, look, if USF's dumb enough to agree to we'll come to UCF every year, then so be it. But I don't see that happening either.
I'm not ruling it out.
I don't know.
All right, let's move over to say it again, Bryson.
It'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. I think we all have our ideas, and so I'm very interested to see which one will ultimately
Well,
play
in football,
out.
I think we have a better idea. In the football one, unlike the other sports, football, like they're all like USF's locked up too. Like it's not like there's a lot of dates available for either team anytime soon. So
You know what? Let's just enjoy the fact that this weekend softball swept them.
in a real rivalry, yeah, baseball, real rivalry.
11. What is it a real rivalry? We just beat them in 11 straight games. I think it's a real rivalry, but
Trust me,
I think that means
yeah.
no.
Don't be fooled by that. A lot of those
I know,
are
it's
close.
I know.
Don't underestimate Ken Erickson.
Oh, now he's like,
Well, I'm not like the Daily
be careful.
Stampede. I'm not like the Daily Stampede that's
Broken.
throwing a legend under the bus just because he's lost a few games to us. I'm going to give credit where credit is due. Unlike the boys over there at Daily Stampede, like they get swept and he's trying to like call out Ken Erickson about retirement. Are you kidding me? God. Jeez.
We had a good
Speaking
week.
of
That's all I
Speaking
said.
of a whole different conversation on
We had a
that
good
one.
weekend, boys.
Let's go. Let's move over to. Let's put on our ascots, shall we, gentlemen, and head over to the country club because we have Bryson and Nick in to talk about golf and tennis, all of whom had their championships this weekend. And I want to start with tennis. And I just want and SMU actually swept both tennis championships in the American here in Orlando. I want to start with the women and Bryson. I'll ask you the same question with the men, and you just got to answer this concisely and give me your reasoning. We'll start with the men. Right now, based on how they finished, they're not. It looks like they're not going to make the NCAAs. Is that right?
They are not. They needed to be above 500. They ended up finishing 11-12 after they lost in the semifinal to 2C Tulane in a very close matchup, 4-3. So as a team, they will not make the NCAA tournament.
And that's too bad, right? Because their ITA rankings, I think where they finish out 57th. So that puts them. That basically does put them out, right? I mean, they weren't going to, even if they won. Well, if they won, they would have qualified. Obviously, not at large, but via an auto bid.
Let's remember where they started this season, though, Jeff. Because
they got
started
off to a
this season
rough
not
start.
ranked at all, and then they got in mid-season at 73, and now they end their season ranked number 51, got as high as 48 with a group that is so dominated by freshmen. Like I said last week, they started the season 1-6, and now they're ending their season like 6-1 ish. Like the progress they made this season. I think Broderick mentioned that this was a season where they built a foundation, or a foundation. I remember that word, foundation, or building blocks, being brought up in our post-game interview from that matchup. You can watch on the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel. And with them going to the Big 12, I think this season really shows that this program's potential, I think, is very high. It's not ideal to not make the NCAA tournament. You always want to make the NCAA tournament. But the fact that we were able to make it at all this season is a testament in and of itself. And we still probably could have had certain balls bounced in different ways during this matchup against Tulane. I cannot emphasize enough how close this was.
Yeah. Cronje and Pavel, likely the only. Could they make the NCAAs as a doubles pair?
If I remember correctly, I believe the highest ranked doubles pair from each conference gets a bid in the individual doubles tournament, if I recall correctly. So I believe that that Cronje and Pavel are in that position as the highest ranked doubles pair in the American, in the ITA rankings that came out this morning. They're ranked 33rd. So I believe that is the highest in the American. So I would wager they will be, but we will find out for certain in a press release on May 2nd.
Okay. Women lost to SMU in the final, so they finished 11-11, 38th in the ITA. Are they getting in?
They did what they needed to do. They managed to. They finished right at 500. They blazed through Houston and Memphis, sweeping both of them to make it to the final to face SMU, and that's really what they needed to do. They needed to win those two matchups in order to secure a 500 or better record no matter what, because if you're below 500, the rule is you can't go in the NCAA tournament. So they're at 500, they made it, and now that they're ranked number 38, I believe the top 40 teams in the ITA ranking are usually are in position for the NCAA tournament. So I would wager that yes, I think they are going to make the NCAA tournament. And the big thing about this one is that they now have time to rest, because Stephanie Webb and Jay Tilburger we did not see them in the conference tournament. Despite Kenyeko saying he hoped they did, but obviously they were still sidelined, probably still recovering from the injuries they sustained earlier in the year that gave UCF women's tennis so much problems in the month of March. So to see now that they have this break, this about 2 weeks-ish before the NCAA tournament begins, that is where they have the time to heal up, be 100% recovered for the NCAA tournament to begin. And considering how this team began the season with them, I think that they could possibly take some teams by surprise in the NCAA tournament, which, if anything, is a good thing. I think if these last few games prove anything for UCF women's tennis to go, though, is that the depth they have is even deeper than I think even last year was, because Anik Kattenberg and Jaleesa Leslie, and I talked to Anik, by the way, on the Black and Gold Banner YouTube channel, that they are quality depth that this team needed in order to make it this far in the first place. So while it's not the most desirable result from the weekend, because obviously you want to be American Athletic Conference champions, the women's tennis team did what they needed to do, and we will find out for certain if they made it the NCAA tournament with their selection show on May 1st, I believe in the evening.
All right. Individually, Marie Mattel, 36th in the country. Do you think she's got a shot at making the NCAAs as well in the individual tournament?
It's the same situation as the doubles tournament, where I believe the highest ranked player in each conference gets an automatic bid into that. That's how Marie Mattel got into the singles tournament last year. And in the ITA and in the individual ITA ranking right now, she is number 36 in the nation in the ITA singles ranking. So I would wager that she will make another appearance in the singles tournament, which is being held at the USTA National Campus, by the way.
There you go, home game. Let's flip over to golf. The Houston Cougars won the men's golf championship. Shout out to Jim Nance on that one. Eric Lopez, Houston golf alum. What's the story for UCF men's golf? I think this is going to be a pretty uphill climb, no?
Well, they're on the bubble again. That's all. That's the biggest thing I can really say. They did get 3 players in the top 10. That is not nothing. Igor Iroshenko had a very good last round. He shot a 3-under last round in order to finish 9th overall, while Luis Carrera and Johnny Travale finished tied for 10th. And honestly, this team could very well have finished in second place, because second through 5th finished about 5 strokes from each other. Houston ran away with this tournament. They're ranked 49th in the nation. I get it. Houston's a great team. But UCF could have finished in second place. They were hovering right around there. It just ended up not working out that way. Now, will those spots cost them? I don't know. We'll see with the selection show. But because of this performance here, they actually dropped 2 spots to number 73 in the golf stat rankings, and 81 teams get selected for the NCAA tournament, with the winner of every conference tournament getting an automatic bid. So UCF is very much on the bubble. I think what I might end up doing is I'm gonna look at all the conference champions to see if there are any conference champions that are ranked below UCF on the golf stat ranking, because any conference championship winners that are ranked below UCF in the golf stat rankings takes a potential at-large bid away from UCF. So I think we could really see it as a similar position to last year, where UCF could be one of the last teams in, or they could be one of the last teams out, like Iowa was last year. I still remember seeing that, and I was thinking, like, wow, that's how close that was.
That's tough. The women are 19th in the golf stat rankings. What was the word on them? We're thinking they're going to get in, right?
Oh yes, and number 19 in the golf stat rankings. That's a perfect scenario for an at-large bid. I honestly think they could have made a lot of noise in the conference championship had a certain SMU freshman named Michelle Zhang had a historic performance at the American Athletic Conference Championship. She finished with a 15 under par with a 201, which is the lowest ever 54-hole score in the American Championship by 7 strokes. 7. She absolutely blew everybody out of the water. And so despite the fact that 3 UCF players finished in the top in the top 10, with one of them being Jess Baker, who finished in 3rd, so we did get an individual podium, SMU was just able to ride a hot performance from their freshman to a 14-stroke team victory. But UCF was able to get second place with a very respectable 11 under par, with their best performance coming in the final round. They got better as the day went along. They are going to find out where they will go for the NCAA regional on Wednesday at 1 p.m. That's when the selection show is on Golf Channel. So, and it'll be interesting to see where they go. I believe there is a regional in Palm Beach Gardens, if I'm not mistaken. So I imagine that if you're UCF, you really want to have us somewhere you can not have to travel far to, because they had to go all the way to Big Ten territory last season. So the less you have to travel, the better, I'd say.
All right. This gives us over to track, Bryson and Nick, and I wanted to get you to update us on that right now, because we're coming down the stretch in outdoor track as well. So they're ranked 16th once again this week. What's the latest on UCF track and field, Bryson?
So the relays continue to show up. Deja Lampkin, Renaya Jones, Beyonce DeFrace, and Asia Wilson teamed up to run the 3rd best 4x100 meter relay time in program history. So there's that, right? So
that's
there's
pretty
right.
good.
Oh, for sure. You also had a lot of professional athletes there, so there's a lot of competition from people not just at the collegiate level, but also at the professional level as well. Latasha Smith had a very respectable, had a 23.31 the 200-meter dash. Renaya Jones doing Renaya Jones things in the hurdles. And that was all at LSU. The distance squad was actually in Atlanta for the Georgia Tech Invitational, where Mariana Rodriguez got into the top 10 in program history in the 5K, which is the third top 10 list she joined recently. So Mariana Rodriguez is having a pretty solid year there for the distance squad. Janiyah Jasper also got to 5th in program history in the 100 meter dash. So as we're kind of moving forward now through into this home stretch of the season, they're starting to really diversify the players, the athletes that are in the upper echelons of the country, and they managed to stay in 16th. They stopped the slide in the oh my gosh, it's a mouthful of an acronym, USTFCCCA rankings, because remember, back in the beginning of the year, they were ranked very high to start because they got started early with their times, and ever since a lot of other top tier programs began their seasons, they've slowly been falling a little bit. But now that they've held their ground at number 16, I think this really shows that all right, it looks like we're kind of a second half of the top 25 type of team. I think that's the signal that this team is sending, and that's a good signal to send at this point in the year.
All right, one more event and then conference for track and field. All right, let's get Nick in to talk about the guys who the guys in the leagues where they play for pay. To quote Mike Francesa. I want to start with MLS here, Nick, because Gino Vivi, he's getting paid. Signed with the LA Galaxy. So he was obviously their super. It's not the MLS draft, Nick. It's the super draft. 1-year contract with a 3 club option years through 2026, occupies an international roster spot. Let's see. So they cleared out some money to get him in there. And yeah, so Gino is going to be a member of the Los Angeles Galaxy. What do you call him? Cal Jennings was in the Galaxy system, is no longer, but I guess the Galaxy have a thing for former UCF guys, right?
Yeah, I guess so. But, you know, it's going to their. Are they? Yeah, the most successful franchise in MLS history with the Galaxy. It's bright lights. Like, I'm interested to see what he does. I really am. You know, the Galaxy are a team that's kind of been slipping for a while, so they're kind of looking for something to click. Maybe he could be that guy. You never know. I'm rooting for him.
You think that he'll get playing time this year a little bit more as things go forward, or it might take a little bit for him to break in?
It could be either. He will get playing time. That I do believe. I don't know. Like, it's still kind of early in the season, so like narratives are starting to be formed about teams. We're not like 100% sure yet. It could be a little bit, like, considering he just signed, it could be a little bit before they put him in, get him to feel comfortable. But then again, you never. Soccer's unpredictable. You never know.
Yeah. And then we had some Sean Johnson news this week too, right, Nick?
Yep. Got back playing for the U.S. national team. And not only that, he got to play in our biggest rivalry game against Mexico. 1-1. It was a 1-1 tie, which I think broke his record that he had since like 2011 of like scoreless streaks. Mm-hmm. But even then, he still had a really good game. Mexico had 9 shots, so he made 8 saves. Pretty consistent game for him. And, pretty cool that he got.
I don't want to rule this out, but it's going to be tough. Now, Sean is 33 years old.
Yeah.
The next World Cup is in 2026. He would be 36.
Right.
Barring injury, do you think he makes it long enough to possibly play again for the USA when the World Cup comes to the USA? It comes to North America, I should say, in 2026. It does come to North America in 2026, right?
Yes.
Okay. What do you think?
You know what's funny is, first of all, I'm pretty sure we had this conversation on my first ever appearance on the podcast.
Right.
We played in a game.
Because Tim Howard played for a long time.
He did.
For the U.S.
I don't know. I don't know. National team is kind of a young game. I don't know. The thing with sports is you never want to rule anything out. I mean, the dude is still killing it right now at an age where a lot of goalies would be falling off. So who's to say what happens? It's just that, the USA has so much young talent, and that includes in goal that are coming up. They got a couple of guys playing over in Europe right now who I could easily see coming over to play in his place. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, I know it sounds like I'm walking around this. He could. I don't think it will happen. I just don't. There's too much young talent. I think eventually
you can't rule it out, but that's still a long way off.
And I'm not. Yeah, I hope he does, because it's nice to say, hey, we got a UCF guy playing for his country over in the World Cup. Right. But I just think there's too much young talent. I don't think so.
Yeah.
But,
it is.
Prove me wrong.
Yeah. His career, he's got 12 career appearances for Team USA. He's on Toronto FC right now. He's played 9 games for them so far this year. All right. And by the way, he hasn't allowed a goal yet. So in his 9 games.
I was just watching on YouTube one day, and then an MLS ad popped up. I mean, MLS, like this company sponsors MLS, and they have him in it. So he has his own commercial now.
Yeah. I should correct myself. It shows number of goals here, the stats that I'm looking at, not the number of goals.
I'm just shocked that I'm glad you guys reminded me the MLS was going on. They're not on linear.
It kind of sneaks in a little bit now.
Yeah, that's what happens when you're not on linear.
Most of their games are on Apple TV.
I would argue that's.
I can't watch those games. Although
that's rough.
How many teams been struggling, so I don't know if I want to.
Yeah. And then that takes us to the XFL and the USFL. We just finished the last regular season week of the XFL. What's the grades right now on the UCF guys, Nick? Because obviously we had Terrence Plummer finish up his season with the Orlando Guardians and among the league leaders in tackles. And I think, even though the Guardians finished with only 1 win in 10 games, Terrence was one of the guys who I thought was one of the top performers for the Guardians this year. And then we also have Rennell Hall in Arlington, right?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you can read more about this in my weekly XFL review that will be coming out later this week. I mean, you and I were there. It could be frustrating watching the Guardians this time. They're just so snake bit. But I'll say this: Terrence Plummer himself had a great season. He was a bright spot on a struggling team. He was very consistent. He finished 7th overall in tackles with 56. It just always felt like he was everywhere. If you look at my weekly recap, it seemed like the stats were very much the same. The amount of tackles he was wrapping up, he did very well. It sucks that his season's over, but I think he'll be back next year. So I'm excited to he goes for there. As for Rennell Hall, watching him has been very interesting because he doesn't get that much time as a receiver. Maybe he might catch 1 or 2 passes a game, but nothing spectacular. Where he's shined has been on special teams. And what's been interesting about that, and we've kind of seen it with the XFL, they kind of mix guys up. So maybe one guy will take a kickoff and then replace him with someone else later in the game. I'm pretty sure there are teams that have had 5 guys who have returned kickoffs at some point in the season. He's been like that, but looking at his stats, he's gotten more and more kickoff returns. This past week, he just took all 6 of them. He's become their main guy. And at the end of the season, he is 10th overall in return yards. And what makes that very impressive is, if you remember, he missed the first 4 games of the season.
Yeah.
And
it was Adrian Killens who was returning kicks for them while he was out.
He's actually 13th on the list, which is very surprising. But, everyone else on that list was pretty much had 10, 7, 8 games. Only one other guy who was 2 spots ahead of him had 6, but even then, he had way more kickoff returns. So the fact that he was in the top 10 despite missing a few weeks is very impressive. And you know what? He gets to add some more. He's going to be in the playoffs.
That's right. Arlington is in the South Championship game against Houston, and then the other one in the North, it's DC against Seattle. In the North, and then a week off, and then the winners of those games play each other at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio in the XFL championship game. So, and then that takes us over to the USFL, which obviously, we talked about it. Huge bummer with Marlon Williams last week, but we still have some other guys that are out there, including one guy who was in the XFL, who's now back in the USFL, right, Nick?
Jordan McRae is back. He's with the New Orleans Breakers, got signed earlier in the week. Now he's, Memphis Showboats. Now he's starting to play again. And it's kind of weird. He's not making his USFL debut because, if you remember, he was on the Birmingham Stallions last year.
Mm-hmm.
Won a championship with them.
With Marlon Williams.
And that just makes me so sad, man. He was going to have a great year.
I know.
He really was. But going to more positives, Jordan finally played, which I'm so happy about. I really was hoping to see what he could have done in the XFL. Obviously, that didn't happen. So the fact that he's finally getting to play, that makes me so happy.
Yeah.
And he's on one of several O linemen from UCF in the league. Marcus Tatum.
Cole Snyder actually is on Birmingham now.
Yeah.
And by the way, they looked good against. They beat Memphis 42-2.
They whooped them.
And the football people who I follow on social media, they're like, okay, which NFL team do we demote in favor of the Birmingham Stallions? Because they looked really good. They were dominant.
Yeah, which I feel bad about because not only is McRae on there, so was Big Cat Bryant. He didn't play this week because he was inactive.
He was inactive this week, right?
I'm hoping he plays soon. And then obviously the final player was Nico Clark, who, in terms of stats, because unfortunately, O linemen don't really produce that much in terms of stats, which I hate because their job is so important. But he's starting to maybe stick out as probably the biggest impact player. He had 5 tackles, also 1 for a loss. He's
off to a good start this year.
Off to a good start. Based on what I've seen, he's kind of turning into like the very similar to Terrence Plummer. Very consistent, makes impact plays, and pretty sure New Orleans is undefeated too as well.
Yeah, they're off to a pretty good start. So, all right. Good stuff, man. So we'll catch all that on Nick's columns there on blackandgoldbanneret.com, where you can find all of our content, including the War on I-4 poll piece that Eric put together. Make sure you vote in that as well. We want to thank Drew, Statboy Drew, and Kyle, VSOTG, for the student of the game, for joining us for joining us earlier. They had to dip out. Eric, you can find him at Eric Lopez Elo, Bryson at Bryson Turner, Nick at Nick Porcelli 2, and of course yours truly at Jeff_Sharon, where as we approach the home stretch with baseball and softball. Eric, you got all 3 softball games this weekend?
That's right. Final home series, Houston, UCF. I'll be there Friday with Francesca and Anna. Then I think
is Angel Shamblin coming over or what?
Nah, she's not coming over for either one. Baseball, softball though. Houston, UCF weekend. We had USF weekend last weekend. We got Houston weekend this weekend. Look for a lot of news coming out and UCF news coming up here in the near future. But just because it's April, there's some big news that could be still coming out. All that much more.
We're going to be ramping up into off-season mode, and you were sharing some stuff yesterday about the Big 12 as well, and how the basketball format is going to work out. I'm sure we'll be able to be covered. We'll be covering that.
We'll be covering that.
Yeah, and as we move into that offseason, this is going to be, and you're right, Eric. I want to emphasize this for everybody listening. This is going to be the busiest and most important offseason probably in UCF athletics history. With the move to the Big 12 on July 1st, we're going to find out how this conference is going to operate. We're going to try and get some content in with all of our new conference mates. Give you a little. So I kind of give everybody a little 101 on everybody coming up in the next couple months as we get ready to move into the Big 12, just so that you are ready come the fall. When we get started, it's off and running with the Big 12. So lots to talk. It's going to be a busy summer for us here on the Night Shift podcast and at blackandgoldbanneret.com. Don't forget, subscribe to us on Twitter, UCF Banneret_SBN, Facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret, as well as Instagram.com, blackandgoldbanneret. Don't forget our YouTube channel where we putting up stuff constantly. And of course, don't forget to follow us if you don't already on our new feed, which you can get right here, because we moved over to Spotify Podcasts as our podcast host as well. And we thank them for that. The Night Shift podcast as well. You can get it on Android and Apple devices. For all of us here at the Night Shift podcast, I'm Jeff Sharon saying thank you so much for listening. Enjoy this week. It's going to be a busy one. Don't forget with more of our stuff coming out. We got Nightcap coming out. Got our USFL, XFL stuff with Nick. It's going to be busy. All the best. Go Knights. Charge on. See you next week.